So the question is what to do immediately after an incident that causes injuries for which someone else might be liable. I want to talk about this and explain it in the context of a traffic accident first, because I think that's going to be most relevant for most people. We'll segue to some other types of injury-causing incidents. But so there's been a traffic accident. You're the driver. What do you do immediately afterwards? Well, immediately afterwards, you first determine to what extent you need help. Have you been injured? Can you extricate yourself from the car? You evaluate your own injuries. Secondarily, you evaluate those injuries of anybody in your car. And I'm not suggesting you become a triage nurse suddenly, but you just need to know, are people injured or not? Once you determine that, if you determine that nobody in your vehicle is injured, you move to anybody else who might have been involved, because you need to know very quickly after that accident if you're going to be calling for help. Which takes us to the next part. You analyze your injuries, then you call for help if needed. Here, I would recommend that you be very quick to call for help, because you'd rather have help and not need it than need it and not have it. And those who are in the business, so to speak, even if they're volunteers, of providing help in that regard would also rather you call for help and not need it, as long as you're not a dick, than need help and not call it. It's why they're there. I think that after you call for help, if there are injuries, you make a judgment as to whether or not you can do anything to improve the circumstances of the injured parties. Maybe that's putting pressure on a bleed. I don't know. I'm not qualified, but you should at least give it some consideration. This is really important. This relates to getting care for yourself, but once the EMTs arrive and are on scene, follow their instructions. If they tell you to sit down, sit down. If they tell you to, I don't know, don't move your leg, don't move your leg. But listen explicitly to their instructions for two reasons. One, because they probably know better than you what you need. And two, hey, on the claim preservation side, I'm going to tell you if in every record the evidence is that you were compliant and followed instructions, that's going to help your claim and not hurt it. So we've talked about what to do to protect yourself, meaning physically, immediately after an accident. Let's move around to the other topic, which is claim preservation. That's the lawyer side of me. And there are any number of things you can do to help preserve your claim or enhance your claim in the moments, minutes, and days following in this case, a traffic accident. First, I'd say don't downplay your injuries on the scene or in the emergency room, meaning, don't make statements that say, oh, it's nothing. Basically, unless you're a doctor, even if you're a doctor, you have no business downplaying your injuries at that point, because until tests are run and blah, 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 and blah, 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 you just don't know. So there's no utility in making a statement about the seriousness of your injuries. So don't, just don't. If an ambulance ride is recommended to you by the EMTs on the scene, take it. You're not qualified, again, to make the call as to the seriousness of your injuries. And it is certainly true that a record that indicates an ambulance transport was recommended is a stronger record than one in which no transport was recommended. But if a transport was recommended and refused, that's a negative and not a positive. That's going to come up in a deposition. You're going to be asked about that, and it's going to be used as an attempt to indicate that the injuries weren't as serious as otherwise. An easy way to protect yourself in that regard is assume your injuries are far worse than you think they are until you've gotten competent medical advice confirming that they aren't. If you do that, then that makes it real easy to accept the ambulance ride. It makes it easy to follow every instruction from the EMT. It makes it real easy to keep your mouth shut about your injuries. It's just the right thing to do. So assume your injuries are far worse than you think they are. I also suggest at this point that at no point in the moments or minutes, weeks or days or weeks after an automobile accident, do you offer any thoughts as to who was at fault. Fault's a legal concept. Fault will depend on a whole lot of things about which you may not know or you may be mistaken. Certainly, in the immediate aftermath of an accident, where there is issues of trauma and shock, you've got no business talking about fault. But even later on, unless you suddenly went to law school and studied a whole lot about causation and fault and whatnot, you got no business talking about it. In the same way, or for very similar reasons, I would discourage anybody from agreeing to talk on a recorded line. What's likely to happen is a representative of the insurance company is going to give you a call and indicate they'd like to talk to you on a recorded line, and that's your sign to say, "Oh no, thank you. I don't want to do that." I would invite the person to wait for a call from your attorney and leave it at that. But you have absolutely no obligation to speak on a recorded line, and there's no negative inference that arises from your unwillingness to speak on that recorded line. So just don't do it. There's just no benefit. Getting back. So something else you can do to preserve your claim is at the scene, presuming that you're not the party, you're not the injured party, or maybe it's a situation where you weren't even involved and you were called to the scene by a family member or something. But you'll want to be careful to document the scene as much as you can. And by document, what I mean is take a lot of pictures. We live in a digital world, and it's a real good area where having far more than you need doesn't come with much cost. And if you take 1,000 pictures, but only 2 of them are relevant, but they're really relevant, the other 998 were also worth it because they got you to the 2 relevant ones. So take a lot of pictures. The things you should take pictures of at the scene include the positioning of any cars, the positioning of any hazards, damage done to other things like telephone poles or structures other than the vehicles. You want to take pictures of any signs that controlled the environment, like a speed limit sign, or more relevantly, traffic signs indicating which way to go. You should also try and get some pictures establishing the relationship of any vehicles to that or to those signs. In documenting the scene, you also want to be careful to document the conditions. On a snowy night, the weather report will say 2 inches or 3 inches of snow fell in County X, but they won't do anything to tell us what the conditions were at the time of the accident, or leading up to the accident, or shortly after the accident. And so pictures taken of the scene can be extraordinarily helpful. If 2 minutes after the scene you can show that the snowplow had just been there and cleared away all the snow, it's a different thing than having to rely on weather reports that say broadly there were 3 inches of snow last night. You want to photograph any identifying information on any of the vehicles. This is really relates to commercial vehicles. If there's a Department of Transportation number on the truck or on a truck, you want to get a picture of that. It's probably helpful to get a picture of license plates just so that doesn't get monkeyed with later on. I would also take a picture of insurance and registration and licensing information. It's easier to preserve all the details on a license or on an insurance card if you take a picture of it than try and write it down. If there are skid marks or anything like that, or defects in the road or hazards in the roadway that might have contributed to the accident, do document those with photographs as well. While you're at the scene of the accident, it would be very beneficial to your claim to identify any witnesses, any video resources. That'd be good.